Good evening, everyone. You're listening to Red Pill 78. I am the corruption detector, and this is your Red Pill news for Saturday night live stream. Joining me live in the studio tonight is my good friends and fellow researchers, Dr. B and the Sharp Edge. You can find links to their Twitter profiles in the description of this video below, as well as a link to the Sharp Edge's YouTube channel with another great researcher. We'll talk about that. Dr. B and Sharp Edge have some really, really interesting things to speak to us about tonight, you guys. We're going to have the full 2 hours. We're going to open up the phones in the second hour, so if you guys have questions, comments, anything you want to talk about in regards to tonight's subject matter, then you totally can. So please, without further ado, join me in welcoming them to the show. Dr. B, Sharp Edge, thank you so much, you guys. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having us.
Oh, it's good to be back. Happy to be here.
Always good. It's been far too long. Definitely glad to have you guys here. We've got a lot to talk about. You know, you guys are incredible researchers. Before we get into any of the subject matter, Edge, why don't you give us a little introduction to who you and Dr. B are. Dr. B will get you in there too.
I'm a researcher, and I've been doing this for a little bit. I think I started about January of 2017. So I've been going at it a little while, and just been growing in my research and writing. And we started a podcast with Corey Stiggs and the speaker, and we started Hive Mind, which is a website where I have several writing pieces, several articles, as well as a YouTube channel with some videos too, some breaking down a lot of, my research and so forth. So I got into the movement, really motivated, and inspired, by the Q movement, and just been growing and going from there.
Good stuff.
And I met Dr. B through all of this. We became friends, and she started sharing some personal stories about connections with, Epstein and medical research. And if she wants to share some of those, she can get into that. But we just became friends. We started sharing in our research together, hit it off. And the more we researched on Epstein connections to modern medicine, the more the web just grew, and we decided to just do this project together. So we've been working on that for about 3 months.
And where is that published at? That's on Corey Stiggs?
Yep, it's on Corey Stiggs' site as well as on Hive Mind, and you can find our website at h1vem1nd.com.
And Dr. B, you have access to a virtual spider's web of connections, and just tell us a little bit about yourself so that people, if they don't know, if they haven't seen you here before.
That's what blew my mind at first, was how many different degrees of separation I had to Jeffrey Epstein funding research of my colleagues through. I had about probably 4 of them or so that they kept popping up. I'm a full-time physician, so I don't have a lot of time to publish or write, but I wanted to get some of this information out because I love to research. I just, it's hard to do it all when you're working 60 or 80 hours a week. And so that's why Edge and she was just a blessing for me, with her helping to research along with me and to publish and put this out. But just for an example, one of the connections that came up in my daily life to Jeffrey Epstein was one of my residents when she grew up in Florida. And when she was 14 and when she was 15, she worked for 3 modeling agencies that one of them, at least I know one of them, is called Famous Faces in Fort Lauderdale, offered her $1,000 to go to one of Jeffrey Epstein's parties to be wall candy. That happened twice. They offered it. And what she said, so there were 3 modeling agencies, and it wasn't through the girls at the agency. It was the direct modeling agency, Famous Faces in Fort Lauderdale. And it was known.
It was like an actual job, not like a back alley proposition.
No, it wasn't. Hey, the girls that I'm friends at the modeling agency told me about this. And the girls did know that if you were willing to do more, you would get paid more. And I don't think that was on the surface of the modeling agency, but he would hire Epstein's people would go to all the different modeling places all over Florida. I mean, one was in Tampa, one was in Ocala, one was in Fort Lauderdale. And it was just known that there was this rich billionaire that he would send his appointees or workers would send requests to the modeling agencies saying what they wanted was underage, young, blonde, thin girls. So when she was 14 and 15, it happened. So they would send, the modeling agencies would then send the headshots to Jeffrey Epstein's agents, and they would pick out which ones they wanted. And if you got picked, that's when you got the offer. So it happened to about 4 or 5 of her friends, and thank goodness her parents wouldn't let her go. But some of her friends did. And it was $1,000 to stand there to be technically, officially, it was a brand ambassador. So that's when you get hired, to wear like a beer shirt or something for any advertising company. That's what you are. So they were the brand ambassadors of the wall candy, and stand around for 3 hours for $1,000. And one of her friends got paid $8,000.
Wow, that's insane. We've got want to say a couple of things. I've had a couple people drop super chats, and somebody joined as a member. Catherine Good, thank you very much for that. And then Laura Roth, also thank you for joining as a member. I saw that Grandpa was saying that it takes a few minutes to get the notification, so asking if we can start a little bit later. It's not a bad idea. I guess I just didn't think that everybody didn't know that I start at 9 p.m. on Saturday nights, so that's fine. That's fine. We haven't even gotten into the meat of this stuff yet, you guys. So please, if you can, do me a favor, help out the channel by sharing and liking this broadcast. It really does help us getting around the algos. You know that this is probably going to be some subject matter that they're not too comfortable with. So whatever we can do to get as many eyes as possible here, then that would be a big help. So brand ambassadors, that's an interesting way to get people who are unsuspecting to show up and maybe do things that they weren't expecting to do. I've heard of that as a job. People being brand ambassadors in bars, and if you're looking to be a brand ambassador at a party for an eccentric billionaire with a bunch of the most famous people in South Florida, that would be a hard one to pass up. Why did your friend not take them up on the job offer?
Her parents wouldn't let her.
Oh, very smart. Very, very smart.
Parents, watch your children, protect your children. That was a grooming institution that was given the okay, and what's the term that I'm looking for? The modeling agencies all over Florida were doing it for a profession.
I wonder how many modeling agencies are implicated in this. Do we have any idea as to if it was extremely widespread, or if there was just a few that were specifically picking these up for him?
Well, my friend only worked at 3 of them, and she specifically mentioned Famous Faces, but there was also another one, Ben's Model Management. I think another one was, what was it? Premier Modeling Agency. But what I was told, what she told me, was it was well known throughout Florida and throughout the modeling circuit that this billionaire would hire you. And 4 of her friends went there, and none of them want to come forward. They're successful people now. This will ruin their life. And this is just one little random connection I have of one of my residents. My resident's a medical doctor.
Well, what that brings to mind immediately, there was another famous beauty queen who ended up becoming a doctor that was associated with Jeffrey. I believe she was like she was like a pageant winner from another country, like Miss Norway or something like that. Does that sound familiar?
Sweden.
Yes. Miss Sweden.
You set
that up.
You set it up perfectly.
You did a great segue on that. Go ahead. I'll let you take it.
Yeah, we collaborated before we did the Cancer Within Modern Medicine. We collaborated on a smaller dig called Epstein's Swedish Obsession, and you can find that on hivemind.com, or also on the YouTube channel. I break it down. But yeah, it's all about Ava Anderson Dubin, the Dubins as a couple, and also another Swedish connection, which maybe Dr. B wants to get into. But yeah, she was a Swedish model. She won Miss Sweden back in 1980, I believe.
Mm-hmm,
so.
1980.
And then Jeffrey Epstein started dating her shortly thereafter.
Very interesting.
She, to give the more of the backstory on her, she was hired by Gerald Ford Modeling Agency, not the President Gerald Ford that's associated with a lot of MK Ultra victims that have come forward and whistleblown. They've called him out, and that's another way different tangent to look down. But I highly encourage people to look at MK Ultra survivor testimonies and see what they have to say about that Gerald Ford. But this Gerald Ford of Ford Modeling Agency apparently saw her on the street. She'd done a couple of there's some pornographic imaging out there of her at the time. She was Miss Sweden, came over here, met Jeffrey Epstein immediately. He encourages her to do her to pursue her medical degree. She ends up going to UCLA School of Medicine, which is now called the David Geffen UCLA School of Medicine. And for anyone that is really dug into David Geffen, what they say about him, what he's alleged to be involved in, how he's got a huge wing at MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art, which ties in with a whole lot of Jeffrey Epstein's connections and friends. They're all on the board at MoMA, and they're all on the board, or they all have medical schools or medical cancer centers named after them. And it seems that this is how they launder their reputations and how they launder. I mean, MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art, it's not just money. That's diplomatic immunity because they're so tied in with the Foundation for Art Preservation and Embassies, which that's where they ship huge cargo shipments of containers filled with art with diplomatic immunity. And I'll go. That's a whole other area we have to explore, and there's lots of really eye-opening connections there. But so she's on the board. Glenn Dubin, she wants to marry Epstein apparently, but realizes that he won't be there for her, so he sets her up with his good friend Glenn Dubin, who owns Highbridge Capital. But they're best friends still. She still sees him every day. He substitutes for her father, Selena Dubin, or Celine Dubin.
She lived at Epstein's brother's apartment complex on 66th Street.
Which is a model, right?
Yep. His brother housed a lot of Epstein's girls. And also, what's the other guy from MC2? Now I'm forgetting his name. He lived there too.
Or was that MC5?
Yep.
Yeah. Jean-Luc Brunet. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, go on.
So Ava or Glenn Dubin is also the first person that's accused by that Virginia Giuffre says that Epstein groomed her for and pimped her out to. He was the first person as she's going through her training. They're grooming her to be this sex slave. And he's on the board at MoMA, but he and Ava Anderson Dubin are on the board of trustees at the Mount Sinai School of Medicine, the Carl Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. And there they have a cancer institute. It's called the Glenn and Ava Dubin Breast Cancer Center. And it is, if you read Jeffrey Epstein talking about in 2012, he wants to bring down, he's testifying in front of the Virginia Islands Economic Development Commission. And he's talking about how he's got this cancer institute up in New York. And that's, his ex-girlfriend who he sees every day. That's Ava Anderson's clinic. And how he wants to bring down these scientists that he's been funding from MIT and Harvard for the program of evolutionary dynamics, how he wants to bring them down to the Virgin Islands to start up his tech company that is going to be analyzing DNA and doing DNA database and data mining and try to look and match up different drugs that looking at a person's cancer sequence of their genome of what genes are mutated and which ones are expressed. And it's supposed to target these drugs that are targeted drugs for different receptors and how it's supposed to match up with the drugs. But it's just it's a huge data mining operation. It's scary.
That's my question. Is it the data mining that the reason they're into medicine? Because we've got kind of this perfect storm of professions. We've got art, diplomacy, modeling, which allows for access to people. Why is it that there are so many connections to medicine with these people? And I'm going to ask you to answer that in just a second. I need to say thank you to Cheryl Trumpet Jackson for joining up. Miami Chris, thank you for that. David Mansfield says, Don't let your son or daughter be pimped out, period. Red Pill 78 woo-ha. And then also Thomas from True Reporting is here. Hey, brother. And then hello to all of my mods. Thank you for being here. So why is
buddy.
it? Why medicine? What is it about medicine?
It's just like the military industrial complex. You make so much money from it. The medical industrial complex is the same. And all these people that are connected to Epstein, a lot of them seem to be some of the biggest, the largest medical philanthropists and big pharma donors. And I'll tell you another personal example in a second involving Michael Milken, who is another connection of Jeffrey Epstein's. But they are funding, so many of them are funding big pharma companies. And I think that in part, my best, how I can surmise it is that on the surface, they really were going to try and do this and think that they were helping, but I think it could also be used for nefarious purposes. Yeah. I think that it was done as just a way to make money and gain more control and have everybody send them their DNA. And it's so scary.
Well, you know what else it automatically reminds me of is Project Paperclip. I mean, we had so many German scientists who were involved in just horrific human experiments, during World War II, prior to that, and then they're absorbed into the U.S. government. And then I would imagine, once they're done with their government service, they're going to be going out into the private sector, just as we see happening in the government today. So, do you think that maybe this cover allows them the money allows them the ability to participate in some really maybe, strange, unethical things? I mean, we know about the,
yes.
like the
I would say there's a huge precedent for it. I would say we would be very naive to say no to that. I would say pretty 100% sure that is what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think it's being used as a cover. I think it's being used as a Trojan horse of sounding like it's something good that's being offered for the people that don't know about this network and this criminal cabal network that is underground below the surface.
How about
throughout the report that we do talk about and uncover several instances where good researchers, good scientists, good doctors, they make the innovations, and then the agenda is usurped and used for nefarious purposes. It's weaponized against us. And we come up with instance after instance after instance through that whole 5-part series of this.
Let's go through that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
With the pharmaceuticals, it's pretty obvious. I mean, there wasn't such a thing as big pharma in the turn of the 20th century. Rockefeller pretty much created that into the multi-billion-dollar industry that it is today. And we see the effects of that with people being over medicated. And, that's a big problem that we're facing today. But then we talked about, the cancer research, how that from the very beginning was kind of taken over by these nefarious characters. The predecessor to the American Cancer Society. Do you remember what it was called, Dr. V? I'll have to look back at it.
I know. I always forget it. I struggle with it. The Society for the Prevention of Cancer, or something like that.
Yeah. So they just loaded the team with all of their players. And so they started. Hey, buddy.
Hi, speaker. Good to see you, bud.
So they started steering the research early on, and so that they could control the narrative. They could push the research the direction they wanted it to go and suppress whatever would not fit inside that. And it is primarily about making money, but I also think it's to drive a certain agenda. And, I think eugenics plays a lot into that.
Absolutely.
And population control, controlling the population in any way they can. And so that's kind of a constant theme throughout the series. And then we get into, the controlling of minds, like the whole psychology, and how they use psychology in various ways to, control the population. And then the last part is the transhumanism stuff, which really gets into, bioengineering, genetic research, AI, all of that. And, we know Epstein had a lot of connections to the transhumanism stuff, but what you see is just really a lot of the same characters over the course of, a century, these families that have just been entrenched in steering medical research for, over a century. And I think it is to make money, but it's also to drive their agendas.
It's not just research too, Edge. It's medical education. They influenced the training of doctors. And information control is a form of mind control, and not just influencing medical school. They influence public school education. This is the same foundation. It's the Carnegie Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, and they really. I feel like how much influence they had and how much money can influence things cannot be understated. So many of these large schools that are named after some of these people, they were involved in some nefarious purposes, and it did tie a lot back into making money. I feel like it's to produce I call my, it's sad to say, I hate that I have to say it, but I feel like Western medicine, I call myself a New World Order Rockefeller medicine pawn, a gatekeeper pawn. I feel like that's what they've trained doctors to be at this point.
Dr. B or Edge, prior to the kind of modern takeover by philanthropists of medicine and this changeover from homeopathic medicine to pharmacological, I don't know what the allopathic, is that it?
Mm-hmm,
Homeopathic and allopathic. Was there anybody who was out there funding like research into traditional medicine, or was it kind of just conglomerated and then changed over to allopathic when, all of a sudden big donors come in and they start controlling the narrative?
I'd say at the Flexner report. What do you think, Dr. B? That's what you told me.
Flexner report was probably one of the seminal moments of that, because what they recommended, and Abraham Flexner was the person who created it, and it was commissioned by the Carnegie Foundation, along with the Rockefellers. The Rockefeller Foundation hadn't officially been formed yet, but it was Rockefeller money. And then you have Simon Flexner, Abraham Flexner's brother, is on the board of the Rockefeller Foundation. Then he becomes president of the Rockefeller Center for, now it's called Rockefeller University, but it was the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research. And he was the president of that. And then they're funding the formation of the American Cancer Society, and the people that are involved at the highest levels of the boards are all their buddies that have a stake in it, because they're invested in big pharma companies, or it just.
So what the Flexner report did was that it was a report where they went around the country and looked at all of the hospitals, schools, doctor's office, etc., came out with this report, and the end result was that they wanted to streamline, consolidate, homogenize all Western medicine, all right. And so then as a result, all of these, homeopathic doctors closed their doors, all of these hospitals closed down, all of these medical schools closed down, and the remaining ones consolidated, and then they were given the carrot. So Rockefeller had like $1 million, which back then, this is like early 1900s. And so in order to get a stake in that grant money, their research was steered towards creating pharmaceuticals for Rockefeller's subsidiaries.
Now,
the Flexner report,
I was just gonna
all but 10.
keep going.
He recommended all but 10 medical schools be shut down, and over half of them were. And the way that they sold it as being a good thing was, we're so behind Europe and their rigorous scientific method and their research studies. We are folksy, we're backwards, we need to get it up to par. And so that's what this was supposed to streamline and get us on the same level as what was going on in Germany mostly.
Well, I was going to say, Germany, it sounds like that's what the model was, because, isn't throughout Europe, isn't homeopathic medicine still practiced? I know that they have, advanced things that they're working on, but it seems like the advanced treatments or the directions that they're going are, maybe calling back to things that we know that have been suppressed, or things that are going in a different direction, that are actually trying to heal and cure people rather than just prolong whatever sickness it is so that they can live and suck as much of their money away until they're just a hulk of a person.
Edge, I don't know. What do you think on that one?
I don't really know a lot about the European side of things and what they were
Okay.
practicing, but I will just say that it always goes back to the Nazi German influence. It doesn't
Yeah.
surprise me at all that we were trying to compete in a way to what they were doing. So that's just my take on it. But I really don't have a whole lot of haven't done a lot of research into that.
Okay, no
And
problem.
neither have I, Red Pill. I'm sorry. I'm not an expert in alternative medicine. I don't feel comfortable because I just frankly don't know enough. I can speak to the problems that I see within modern Western allopathic medicine, which are, I mean, those are a laundry list, an extensive. It's such a messed up system that is so broken. But sorry,
and it's okay. But before like modern cancer treatments came into existence, what was the standard regimen for curing cancer? I mean, and I guess we need to know how prevalent cancer was before they started really needing to treat it. Because, I mean, it seems like the rise in cancer rates kind of came with a couple of different key things throughout the 20th century. Introduction of chemicals into the household, introduction of fluoride into the water supply, things like that.
So I
We
know
should
that
talk
Nixon's...
about. Oh,
what?
sorry. Go ahead. We should talk about Mary Sherman and Oxner in this part here. That's a good story on the
Dr. Mary's
cancer
monkey.
research. Yes, and then also on the suppression side of it, you should mention the Royal Rife story that we included as well. Do you know about him? Red Pill, do you know about?
Oh yeah, the
Royal
Rife machine. Yes, I've had a guest on before who actually owns an actual Rife machine, and he had some. Dr. B, do you remember this? He was on with Charles. It was Rick and Charles, and he had some type of blood cancer. I don't know if it was some type of leukemia or something like that, but they basically told him to go home and die.
He had acute lymphoblastic leukemia, if I remember correctly.
That's it.
And it really depends on what type of mutations and translocations he has. Every single cancer is different, and there's some really, really bad mutations to where we just know it's a grim prognosis. So I'm assuming he was up there with one of the really bad ones. I've met Charles Pixley and talked to him briefly. He's a nice guy, but he has mentioned his understanding of the modern Rife machines, and that I'm not an expert on this. But his theories on it were that they weren't up to speed with what Royal Rife really had. So that's all I know on it.
Okay. Real quick, before we continue, I need to do a couple of thank yous to the audience. Let's see. Dana Finkler. Yep, Dana called in last night having a little bit of trouble. Dana, it's not a problem. Don't worry about it, buddy. Yes, we can do a podcast in the very near future. I would love that. Love to see Thomas. Warwolf said transhumanism, tons of scientists involved with ritualistic and occult practices. Arizona Finn, thank you for joining. Michael Kenny said, let's not forget the revolving door of FDA officials becoming pharmaceutical executives and then back to the FDA again. Also inventing conditions for their drugs such as restless leg syndrome.
It's a great comment.
Yeah. If you want to comment on it.
Is a huge. I wanted to give one example, but it lays a whole lot of groundwork of involvement with the revolving door between the FDA and Big Pharma, and how it's a subtle influence. It's not openly sinister, but when you know people, you have a connection. And so if someone's worked at the FDA before and now they come over to be the head of product efficiency to make sure that everything is going to be smoothed over with the FDA, I mean, you just call your contacts that were there before. It's just you always want to help out a friend. So it's a subtle way of influencing, but it's dangerous. And I'm sorry, I'm struggling for words on it, but
it seems like, I mean, it's not just medicine, let's be honest. I mean, it happens with, I would imagine, all industries that are regulated by the U.S. government. I mean, we have people that come up in an industry and then they're hired by the regulatory body, and then they're hired to go back into the industry and then, lobby to the government. And it's just, I mean, it's a rubber band. It just goes back and forth. And there is so much money out there. It's very difficult for most people when they're presented with an opportunity like that. I think that people probably start out with very good intentions. I would say the majority of people start out with good intentions, and then they're compromised in some small way. And then once they're compromised, they are continually compromised. And then, there is a ton of money in it. And then I think by that point, they're like, what's the big deal? I've already done this. If I don't continue to do these worse things or, make sure that this company is, given a pass by the U.S. government, then why not? Let's go ahead and do it. But what do you think about medicine, though? I mean, we're talking about people's lives. Do you think these people believe the BS that they're being spoon-fed, or do you think that they realize the damage that's being done? Because, I've watched people wither away and die from cancer treatments. And I know that there are other treatments that are available out there that people could use, and they could probably have, either as good of success as they get with standard modern day medicine, or even better success with it. I mean, are these people involved in this medical stuff being real, or do you think they're actually evil?
No, they're good people. They're good people that don't know what they don't know. They only know what they're taught. And if you do compare to medicine before the Flexner report, cancer was very deadly. We didn't have good cures for it at the time, or the ones that I am learning about, some others that were very much suppressed by the FDA. But cancer, leukemia killed everyone. It was a 90 percentile death rate back in the early 30s before we had anything. And now it's now a 90% cure rate. And that's an amazing an accomplishment. But also, the surgeries that we had before, and cancer rates have skyrocketed. To loop around to your previous question, with is cancer increasing? Yes, it is. The Nixon war on cancer, when they started doing the population studies, there were a couple of cancers that really shot up. One was lymphoma, soft tissue cancers, some melanoma, and I've forgotten the other one. But I know prostate cancer and breast cancer and lung cancer too. Those have all shot up. And prostate cancer, breast cancer, those are hormone driven. So like a symptom for causing what a risk factor for getting breast cancer is obesity, because your adipose tissue that you have has a molecule that makes estrogen. And then so the bigger you are, the more estrogen you have, and we tend to see a lot higher rates of breast cancer in people that have excess body fat. Testosterone, and it's also some of the stuff that we're eating. How many hormones, growth hormones, are being pumped into the animals that we eat that then get transferred to us? That can lead to it as well. But back at the turn of the century, when you got breast cancer, what they used to do was a horrific surgery called a radical mastectomy that would remove not just your breast, but your pectoralis muscle. It would remove all the lymph nodes where the cancer would first spread. When it metastasizes, it goes to your lymph nodes first, and they would just remove it all. And the poor women that were suffering from this, now they can't drain the lymph from their arms. They have these huge elephantitis looking arms that are huge and filled with fluid because it can't be drained. It's very painful. So there is an improvement, but granted, I'm still very ignorant on some of the alternative methods.
Well, there's one I wanted to ask you about in particular. There was a former radio show host. His name was John Kansas, Kansius, and he had patented a version of a cancer treatment, basically injecting nanoparticles into a tumor like gold or carbon, and then using a concentrated, microwave beam to superheat those particles and essentially burn the tumor out from inside of someone, and and then leave only healthy tissue around it. And it was supposed to be going through actual trials. And, of course, it never materialized because there was some companies that stood in the way, and he ended up dying of cancer before it happened. It was something that couldn't be treated with this. But have you ever heard of that, John Kansas?
I have not heard of him. I've heard of the struggles that Brzezinski had in that movie. That's a great movie. What's the documentary called? Off the tip of my tongue. It's Brzezinski, cancer is a serious business, and he had anti-neoplastomes that he was creating, and the FDA put their foot down and said, we will never approve a drug. They have it on quotes in the documentary. We will never approve a drug if it doesn't come from a pharmaceutical company. He was trying to do it outside of the system. He's a MD PhD that was at Baylor College of Medicine. He's not what the AMA would like to label a quack physician, but they sure did try and drag his name through the mud. And every year he has to go in front of the Texas Medical Board where his license gets questioned. But that's a good example of how someone, even within the system, but going outside of big pharma, trying to do something can get shut down.
I actually want to circle back to Dr. Mary's monkey because we mentioned it, but we haven't actually spoken about it.
You want to take that one, Edge?
Edge, are you there?
Okay, I'm here. I had it muted. I was drinking some water, so I didn't want you to hear me gulping. No, I can set it up for you. How about that, Dr. B? Okay, so Dr. Oxner had a clinic, and he brought on Dr. Mary Sherman, where they were working on the polio vaccine, which apparently had SV40 in it, which causes cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And
SV40, that's monkey cancer, right? Or monkey virus or something like that?
It's a virus, a monkey virus that causes cancer, but you have to, the subjects have to have a compromised immune system. And this is where Dr. B is better at explaining. But they were basically weaponizing this vaccine, this SV40. And it was all for nefarious purposes, but there were good people working under Oxner who weren't aware of this. So you take it from there, Dr. B.
Well, at the beginning, actually, and I really like that book, Dr. Mary's Monkey. I really recommend everybody read it if they can. It's really well written. Dr. Mary Sherman was very upset that SV40 was in the polio vaccines that had been released from 1955 till the early 60s, and how hundreds of thousands of batches had it, and how the NIH and the NCI, the National Cancer Institute, National Institutes of Health, tried to cover it up when they had 2 MD PhDs that came forward and said, no, it's not ready. We're worried that it's causing tumors in some of our lab animals. And, you had Dr. Alton Oxner. He is the president of the American Cancer Society at the time, which has on the board of directors, who's the founder? Wild Bill Donovan, the founder of the OSS. So they're buddies. And he says, no, it's safe. And there's just so much hubris involved. When you have hubris and ignorance and, what do they say? The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, his intentions were noble, but there's Salk and Sabin, the 2 different doctors that were working on the 2 different types of polio vaccines, thought they would be heroes. And you want to go out, you want to be a hero for curing polio infections. But then when this comes around and it's something that sounds so terrible and that you actually caused it, you can see how the cognitive dissonance or the ability of them not wanting to accept those findings, or even the government, Richard Nixon was the vice president at the time when it got released. Eisenhower was doing a lot of the foreign work, and he was handling a bunch of the domestic side, and Richard Nixon would have been in big trouble if they'd released this too early and they found that it was leading to cancer. But when he injected his grandchildren to prove that it was safe, this is Dr. Alton Oxner, his grandson died and his granddaughter came down with polio.
Yep.
So Sherman was very upset that this was happening and that it was being covered up. And the goal was to try and covertly disarm the virus and make sure that it wouldn't hurt other people. And the way that viruses can lead to developing cancer, just as a basic background understanding, these viruses, they're DNA viruses, and they integrate their genomes into our genome. So anytime you break up our DNA and you insert things that aren't supposed to be there, It leads to DNA repair, and there can be gene mutations that occur, or different genes can be linked up where they're not supposed to be, with, like, let's say a sequence that always causes this gene that's not supposed to be turned on all the time. Now it turns it on. It's a growth factor gene that makes the cell constantly replicate through the cycle. Or the viruses themselves will have these genetic codes that will cause more production of the genes that are located next to it. And so over time, those are hits to our genome. And what our immune system does is it recognizes cells that are infected with viruses, and it kills those cells. So as long as you have a healthy immune system going on, viruses are usually under the surface. They're quiet, they're quiescent. When you get a cold sore, for people that have cold sores, they get stressed at times. And so normally the virus is quiescent, not doing anything. And then you've got a lot of stress, or you're not sleeping, your immune system, there's stress hormones in your body, dampen down your immune system. And all of a sudden that ugly thing roars up. And that's an example. And so when their immune system can't take out these cells that are infected, they start infecting all the other cells. And every time they're integrating their genomes into other cells, it's causing more mutations, more hits to your body. So, for instance, our AIDS patients, HIV virus attacks the immune system, so where they can't fight off infections. So not only can they not fight off cancers that are developing, because our body also recognizes cancer and kills it. Cancer has to find a way to evade our immune system so that it can grow. But it also allows all these viruses to flourish. And all the people with full-blown AIDS come out with all these virus-caused cancers. So like Kaposi sarcoma is caused by a human herpes virus that breaks out in these people. They get all these high-grade lymphomas, which is caused by Epstein-Barr virus. But we don't see it until we see somebody that's extremely immunocompromised, whether they've had an organ transplant and are on they're on immunosuppressors, or they have what's the term I'm looking for? The disease where their immune system is messed up. So like psoriasis or something where their immune system is not acting correctly, not doing the job that it's supposed to be doing. That's when you're compromised for developing some of these things. And there's so much autoimmunity that is occurring now within our society that people's immune systems are dysregulated.
It's very true. It seems to be running rampant. I have a couple of questions from the audience. Gypsy Nurse Kathy, who we need to pray for her, guys. She asked for that at the beginning of the show. She says, ask Dr. B about the injections they give for psoriasis that suppress the immune system. So perfect time to ask that question.
Corticosteroids is, I'm assuming, what's given. I mean, I'm a pathologist. I just diagnose cancer. I don't.
You're after the fact.
Treatment. Yeah. Like, I don't give vaccines. I don't give drugs. I don't even write prescriptions, because I'm behind the scenes. I give the doctors the information they need. But corticosteroid injections, there's a reason why you don't take them for long term. Is over time they do lead to immunosuppression, and so they'll stop it and they'll taper you off, and then they'll start it up again.
I also, Trisha Q Patriot from Texas asked Dr. Oxner out of New Orleans, and I'm pretty sure that's correct. That's him.
That's him.
And somebody else said that their friend married his grandson. I don't know if that was the same one. Maybe I got that crossed in the chat, but thank you both for those. And then Dale Bercier says, keep up the great work, Red Pill 78 Sharp and Dr. B. Thank you all for that.
Oh, thanks, guys.
And so
they were irradiating the mice that they were working on. That's how they were making them immunocompromised. No?
Okay.
Oh, yeah,
right, Dr.
they
B?
were. And it actually morphed. It morphed into a project from them trying to help into a secret covert CIA operation for them to weaponize cancer to kill Castro.
And it connects to the assassination of John F. Kennedy as well.
It really does. It really does. And I was just talking to Judy Berry Baker, who is the author.
Yes.
You gotta
Put me in touch with her. Put me in touch with her.
She's incredible.
I would love to interview her.
You got to read her book.
I know.
Oh, I've got it. I've already read it.
She's telling us, Red Pill, she's the real deal. She's
I know.
telling the truth.
Yes.
She knows her stuff. She was working on RPMI medium up when she was up at Buffalo, being trained. I mean, what Oxner did was they groomed her. She was so sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself, but she's the missing piece in a lot of the JFK researcher investigations, because she was recruited by Dr. Oxner. She was a child prodigy, who had shown her high school physics professor had worked for the OSS, and he was a colonel who had retired and now was teaching physics. And they got started on doing these cancer projects to where they were trying to give cancer to mice faster than anyone else to show that smoking causes cancer.
Yeah.
And they did it, and she got the attention of, Nobel Prize winners. She got the attention of the head of the American Cancer Society. And so she's getting scholarships everywhere. And they want her to go up and train at the Roswell Park Cancer Institute up in Buffalo, New York. When she's 17, they send her, 16 or 17, they send her up there. She's perfecting RPMI medium to keep cells viable. And I work with that stuff every day. Like I that's another tangent, but I told our director, I held up one of the RPMI vials and I've got to tell you about the person who did that, who helped perfect this medium. And this was a really blue-pilled lady that it's really nice, but just really is never totally brainwashed by the mainstream media. And it was exciting for me to tell her everything. And now she's excited, and she actually went and watched Oliver Stone's JFK and started asking questions. So it's nice to be able to open up the minds of all the physicians around me. I enjoy that. But back to
before you continue, I just want a couple people asked in the chat. The books we were just talking about was Dr. Mary's Monkey, and then Me and Lee, which Judith Vary Baker wrote the book Me and Lee. She appeared as a character in Dr. Mary's Monkey, and they both kind of converge. So they're two different books, but they both connect. So I highly recommend reading them both. Absolutely love it. I will try to get the author of Dr. Mary's Monkey on here as well.
Oh, I can email you today too.
Oh my gosh.
I'll see what I can do.
You're my best friend. Help me out.
You got it, my friend.
Appreciate it.
So, and sorry that I'm rambling on this, but it's just a fascinating story. And to cover back to what she was doing, Oxner is getting her trained to work with SV40 to see how to handle cancer cells, how to get them to grow in medium, how to infect them with SV40 virus, and then she's already irradiated all the tumors that she was giving mice. She was an expert on it. They had her with people from Oak Ridge National Laboratory working with her when she was in high school. And so he brings her down to New Orleans the summer of 1963 to help work in Dr. Mary Sherman's lab on detecting SV40 in the polio vaccine and how they're going to help stop it. That's what she's told. But the issue was she was running out of money. She had a bad situation at home. She gets there 2 weeks early, and Dr. Oxner wasn't ready for her yet, and she had no money. So looking back on it now, they needed to do something, and they ended up she meets Lee Harvey Oswald in line at the post office. And now she's looking back at it. She's like, oh, he was sent. He was sent to sort of help me out and make sure that I could be taken care of, because they knew she was in a bad situation. But now she gets herself involved on the covert side of this project. And instead of working in Dr. Mary Sherman's lab, and Dr. Mary Sherman's head of she was trained at the University of Chicago. Her best friend was Enrico Fermi. He's one of the Manhattan Project guys, and he was
Fermi
the first
Labs
person,
too, right?
Fermi Labs, and he's the one that initiated the first sustainable nuclear chain reaction, and he did it with actually a grandson of Lehman Brothers, and it's funny because that's related to Edgar Bronfman's wife, and Loeb Lehman is related to George Weil, who is also working on the Manhattan Project, and so that brings us to sort of the Jeffrey Epstein connection. Is how many of these? How
many hops?
It's why I'm going everywhere on this project, but they're connected. But anyway, Mary Sherman at University of Chicago gets trained there. She's an MD, PhD. Then she becomes the head of the pathology committee for the American Society of Orthopedic Surgery. So she's a powerhouse in the 50s, and she's in a man's world. Surgery back then very much was a man's world, and she's flourishing and really good at it. But so sorry for that tangent, but getting back to Lee and me. So the goal was he was working with David Ferry for the JFK researchers out there. David Ferry was the person that was heading up the Schlumberger anti-Castro training facility, where they were training a lot of the anti-Castro Cubans to go down and do Bay of Pigs and for covert operations. He was a pilot. He ends up dying. Mary Sherman ends up dying. Everyone connected to this project ends up dying, but Judith Berry Baker goes into hiding. And what happens, what they're doing is Oxner tells her that they are going to mutate cancer as fast as possible, because if they can get a really bad one, then maybe they can understand how it works and maybe they can stop it. And she's a 19-year-old kid. She's brilliant, but she's naive, and she was groomed by these people. And her dream was to go in and cure cancer. And as she's waking up to further what she's involved in, she realizes that she's weaponizing cancer and making the most deadly cancer that's ever been known out there. And she's heartbroken about it.
Well, and excuse me, but how ironic is it that the advent of this work really introduced cancer into society as an epidemic, and then Richard Nixon heads up the war on cancer under his administration.
Yeah, and even in Edge's report, we go into who was the person that was responsible for starting the war on cancer. And Dr. Mary Lasker. Right. Yeah, she's there as head of one of the Treasury, working right there with Margaret Sanger. They are the major funders. She and her husband are the major funders of Planned Parenthood at the time. And she's the one.
And cancer, cancer research.
And they're just dirty connections. And once you start following her connections, it's awful. And it is ironic and it's sad. And that's why it's hubris, too. It's people wanting to do things when they just figured out the nature of DNA. They just discovered it in 1953. So they don't know what they're doing. We still don't know what we're doing, but we're so excited about the potential that the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and hubris and pride and ignorance is kind of the story.
How
so
sad.
The whole thing is the end result. They were planning to weaponize cancer to kill Castro.
Right.
That was the covert operation that they were. Do you want to get into that? How they were planning to do that?
Yeah,
Dr.
let's
Reed?
talk about that in just a second. I want to do a couple of things from the audience. Bert said, in my opinion, suspect that all forms of medicine operate on the placebo effect. QHHT is interesting. I've seen holistic cure impossible things. Obviously, the placebo effect is real, but I do believe that medicine has to have some actual benefit in terms of specific things. And I'm sure that, we can talk about that. Trisha Q Patriot Texas said that her mother was Dr. Oxner's anesthesiologist, and she has pictures of them together. And then Ashman7373 said, sugar seems to be the highest cancer food. Is there any safe sugar or sugar cane? I definitely wanted to ask you about that. And then Baby Yoda said, I miss your laugh. Can we tell a joke to make everybody laugh, you guys? Well, yeah, I'm sure that I'll see something tonight that gives me a smile. That did right there, Baby Yoda. I want to make sure you're watching tomorrow on my show with Methods, because you are going to see something very, very cool. I can't wait to show everybody, but I can't talk about it yet. It's going to be a surprise. So yes, lots of people talking about sugar in the chat. I've heard that cancer survives on sugar. If someone goes on, say like a paleo diet or some type of diet where they starve themselves of sugar, is that going to be beneficial in combating cancer?
Well, in general, when people were the more food that's restricted is actually been shown to be helpful in preventing cancer and helping prevent disease. Processed foods are the big ones. I would just stay away from anything that has been processed and refined by a lot of these companies that are sugars. It's extremely processed. I agree that there's a lot of evidence showing that processed foods lead to cancer.
Yeah. People often ask me, what should I be eating? And I say as much whole, natural foods, unprocessed foods as possible. If you can eat organic, I think that's much better. The fewer chemicals that you're introducing into your body, obviously that's great. I wouldn't drink just regular tap water. Whatever you can do to drink maybe natural mineral water or water that has been purified, non-fluoridated, that's a good idea. But yeah, processed foods, I think that is the really big thing. I mean, it's difficult to look back, throughout the 20th century. I mean, it's kind of like there was several things that happened with changes in society that increased the rates of cancer. But going back to Edge, that point that you were going to talk about before I said the super chats.
Oh, right. The whole goal of the covert operation was to weaponize cancer so that they could inject Castro with it.
I'm sorry.
They had a doctor that was sympathetic to the cause that they were going to use to do that. So if you wanted to elaborate a little bit, Dr. B.
Yeah, this is the summer of 1963. This is when Lee Harvey Oswald is flying to Houston, talking to the MD Anderson doctors there. They change it out for the vials of the cancer cells within the medium. They give him another canister, and they say that this is fresh, and they send him off to Mexico City, and that's his rendezvous with the person that's going to take it into. He was supposed to take it into Cuba. That's what they were telling him, but they were setting him up as a patsy. He knew he was being set up as a patsy, and
No, I was going to say, I have a point when you're done. So I'm sorry. Continue. I thought you were going to a natural segue.
So it's just real sad. He, how do I lost my train of thought on that one? They were going to irradiate. The plan was to give Castro diagnostic x-rays, but mess with the machinery and bump up the frequency and give him really high level full body ionizing radiation that would have knocked out his immune system. Because those high levels, what they do if they don't cause mutations within they kill off most of your immune system stem cells, your white blood cells and your red blood cells. Those that don't get killed off, they can cause double-stranded breaks. They can cause mutations. And I mean, this happens all the time with chemotherapy. We have something called therapy-related disease, where they take all these alkylating chemotherapy agents, like the mustard gas-based ones that, remember when I was telling you about Cornelius Rhodes and how he was working on that? Mm-hmm. A long time ago, we talked about that in Edge's story. That's another Rockefeller
right
creature that was trying to kill people. But so therapy-related disease, when they get chemotherapy 5-10 years later, they come back with really dysplastic blood cells, and sometimes they bust out with acute myeloid leukemia or another type of acute leukemia, and it's called therapy-related AML. And it's just we know that it's caused by the chemotherapeutic agents that we gave to help heal them of their first disease. And now 5 to 10 years later, they get this. And I see it all the time.
Oh, that's awful.
They were gonna weaken his immune system by temporarily knocking it out. And that's what happens every time when we treat patients with acute leukemia. You knock out the cancer clones, and then you hope that you kill it all, and you keep giving them cycles, and hopefully you've gotten him into remission. So he's now weak. I
was just going to say, what about alkaline water? This is something that I've heard quite often, is that people who drink alkaline water versus, lots of acidic fluids, that does help because cancer can't survive in an alkaline environment. And True Reporting said, I survive only eating sunlight and filtered water. Good, buddy. I wish I could go on that diet.
The human body, the pH that we stay at in homeostasis is between 7.35 and 7.45. Anytime you get out of whack of that, it causes a whole lot of damage to your body. I haven't read the research on alkaline water. My nature as being raised up in the modern Western medical system is to kind of, I get programmed too. I get programmed to sort of scoff at things. And
but what about just staying away, from lower is acidic? Is that correct? Yeah, because higher is alkaline. Yeah. So I mean, what about just staying on that higher end? of the pH scale, and not because I mean I had a friend who drank nothing but Coca-Cola, 2 liters of Coca-Cola, didn't drink any water, and eating like McDonald's and Domino's pizza, and when he was like 35, his body was riddled with cancer, and I can't imagine that didn't have something to do with it.
Red Pill, I'm sorry, but I don't have enough information on research on it to speak informatively to give an opinion that can have any merit on it, because I just don't know.
That's
so
no
I'm
problem.
sorry.
I had some guests that came on last year where we had a long discussion about alkaline water and some other things, and I want to have them back because they're going to talk more specifically about some stuff. But they brought a lot of research about it. I'd actually love to send it over to you, Dr. B. Because it really, it's got science behind it. It's not just, people out there saying, do this and this will happen. Like there's actual research to show that it works. I need to give a couple of quick thank yous. Miami Chris, thank you for that, buddy. Social Observer says Pharmacia is one of the devil's sharpest knives. I think that can be true in many instances. And then Susie Hoosie, thank you very much for that, Susie. All right. I want to continue to go through the points of your articles, you guys, but I do want to open up the phones right now because I know that we're going to have lots of questions tonight. So, you guys, I am about to put the Zoom information on the screen. Right there is the meeting ID. And, oops, need to move that phone number a little bit. Oh, shoot. Hold on. There we go. Ooh. There we go. Okay, so the phone numbers are on the screen right now. I'm also going to throw the information into the chat. That'll be the link. Everybody, I hope everybody knows that if you need to have Zoom to be able to call in and ask questions. And then if you don't have Zoom, then you can call the phone numbers and then use the meeting ID in order to join the conversation. And there we go. Okay, so now those have both been put in there, and I'm also putting that information, guys, into the description of the video. So if you don't see it in the chat, if you don't see it on the screen, then you should be able to see it here. And I hope that everyone knows, because I'm not going to tell you again. It's out there. Baby Love 78 said, I used to drink alkaline water when we lived in California. Haven't found it as easy here in Texas. I'm more sick now. Very interesting. All right, well, we already have our first caller. This is going to be Group C. Group C, the Creeper, you are on the air with Dr. B and Sharp Edge and Red Pill 78. What was your question or comment?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you, my friend.
How's it going?
Excellent. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good. So I wanted to talk about, I did some research on what's it called, resonant frequencies, and how certain frequencies can heal certain issues. I think in some of your previous videos you brought up what are they called, the solfeggio frequencies or something like that?
Solfeggio, something like that. Yeah.
Right. So have any of you heard of any cases of people benefiting from these solfeggio frequencies, if you know of any?
Dr. B or Edge?
That would be a Dr. B question.
I have not read any research papers on it. I mean, I understand. I've seen the stuff out there on the 440 hertz versus 444. I don't know. I do know that what Royal Rife was doing with his really awesome microscope, it's better than what he had in the 1930s, was much better than anything that I'm using today. But he was working on resonant frequencies causing the cell membranes of bacteria and viruses to break apart and be destroyed. And while our human membranes, our cell membranes would still be viable, and that's how he was killing it off. And killing off cancer cells and killing off different bacteriophages, viruses, bacteria, things like that. But the issue is, and it really is an exciting field when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, but it also makes a whole lot of sense for it being used for if it got into the wrong hands. And because all you have to do is tweak the frequency and see how you can destroy human cells. And so it's like, I can see how that could be used as a huge bioweapon.
Absolutely. Yeah.
To lyse our own cells. And so I know that they destroyed his lab, they ruined him, and Edge included that video on Royal Rife by True Stream Media. They're the best journalists out there that really, I mean, if my colleagues knew the stuff that husband and wife team talk about, they're incredible. I recommend watching their stuff for a lot of just history of some of the nefarious covert operations that have been used in medicine. But they explain the Royal Rife phenomenon machine really well.
I'm definitely going to be doing another show on Royal Rife, and we've got Charles Pixley coming back definitely to help with that. And I specifically want to do a show on the resonant frequencies, and I haven't found a researcher yet who has enough authority to speak about it. But well, thanks for your call, Group C. I appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you. You all have a good night.
Yep, you too. Bye bye.
Good night.
One thing I did want to ask you about, Dr. B, there is something that some guests told me about here on the program. There was a man who was diagnosed with a really terrible form of cancer, and he claims that he cured it by taking a canine dewormer called mebendazole. And that now after him publicizing his story, there is a lot of people that are using this to try to cure their cancers. I don't know if this is all cancers or if it's very specific ones, but I would love to know if you've heard anything about this.
I've heard that story. I haven't read the case study or the series on it. I mean, what that drug is, mebendazole, is it's an anti-helminth. It does. I forgot the mechanism of action, but you can look it up quickly, and it does kill other organisms that have a lot of their DNA is very similar to ours. Their cells are similar to ours. So the fact that I'm sure that certain cancer cells would definitely react to it, but I just don't know the mechanism behind it, and I don't know enough or have seen anything for it to be on the various types of cancer.
Well, no problem. I mean, it seems to me like this is something that would be ripe to do human trials with. I mean, if you've seen anecdotal results that have been so incredible, And then also, what does it say about cancer if it's a dewormer, if it's something that's killing a parasite? Any theories? I know we're spitballing.
Well, cancer cells, it's our own DNA that has been recombined and mutated, and the chromosomes have been broken, and they've joined together to where genes that are normally not supposed to be turned on are constantly turned on, or genes that are supposed to be a tumor suppressor that are supposed to always be turned on, those get turned off. And it's like some certain tumor suppressors are ones that if there's a problem with the DNA, if there's a mutation of the DNA, the cell won't go through the cell cycle. It stops dividing until things are fixed. So if you turn that off, all of a sudden now you're accumulating all these mutations and you don't fix it. And then it's a runway takeoff of, as you get these cancer clones, some of them your immune system knocks out, but some of them they don't, and they survive through. As far as the dewormer, again, I have to look at the mechanism of action, but the fact that it's killing other animal cells, I'm sure that it could kill some of our cells too. And
it looks like it's actually febendazole. Sorry, there's another drug that it looks like it's closely related to it that also has some anti-cancer potential, but I dropped a link to that.
Yeah, the bendies is how you remember them. The bendazoles, it's all the same. The different pharma companies, they have Me Too drugs to where they change a little tiny molecule and then they have their own version with the same mechanism of action, but it's a way to make more money. So yeah, the bendazoles all work the same.
All right. Coming up next, we have PQ Media. PQ Media, you're on the air with Dr. B Sharpedge and Red Pill 78. What's up, man? How you doing? We've got no mic yet. Yeah. No problem. Just waiting for that mic. So, in looking at the research that you guys have done, it's clear in the third part, you're talking about eugenics and stuff. Is there still an active, open eugenics platform within modern medicine, or is it completely covered up?
It's not open. It never changed. They just changed the words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
After the Nazis and the horrors of the Holocaust and what they were doing with eugenics, then they really just decided to, change the wording to family planning,
There you go.
freedom of choice, genetics, but it was always the same agenda, in my opinion. Is that how you see it, Dr. B?
Oh, for sure.
All right. PQ Media, looks like you got your microphone working. What was your question or comment for Dr. B and the Sharp Edge?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. A little bit quiet, but I can hear you.
My bad. But yeah, I noticed the volume thing was low. I did have a question about the vitamin and like low vitamin.
Vitamin deficiency?
There you go. As far as cancer is concerned, and is there any research on that?
Dr.
Well, so vitamin D.
Well, I mean, I would just...
B12, if you don't take enough B12, you have issues with your red blood cells dividing, because B12 helps make certain DNA bases that you need. If you don't have that, your red blood cells do look dysplastic. But as far as cancer in general, I don't know of any of the deficiencies. I know everyone likes to take a lot of vitamin C, but
I've heard that.
Again, I'm not an expert on alternative medicine or even medical treatments, because my specialty is diagnosing cancer. So I'm sorry that I just don't want to give out information to be taken like I know what I'm talking about when I haven't read this stuff.
We should say not medical advice on everything that we're talking about. We are just, talking about theories and speculation. But, of course, I appreciate both of you giving us, your opinions based upon that research. PQ, anything that you want to say as well?
Yeah. I really didn't call him about today. I called him about yesterday. I apologize. You wanted to know I wasn't around when you were doing your thing yesterday about
no problem.
And you asked some questions in which I actually had information on, and I'll just quickly try to cover it. The name of the last name of the queen is Saxe Burn.
Oh, I saw that. Yes, yeah.
She was actually prosecuted for kidnapping. There was a group of children in which they went missing. They were with her on some trip some time ago, and they went missing.
Right.
That's the crime in which she's been convicted on several times. The land in which you're talking about, we have it here in America called Crown lands. My dad told me about that way back.
Right on.
Are basically any governmental land in which we have no access to. So reserves, things like that, in which are technically protected land, those are considered crown land. She gets money from everything that we put into there. Alex Jones did a documentary called America Destroyed by Design.
Okay.
And that he doesn't mention the crown lands, but he does mention the idea that money goes to
all right. Sweet. Well, I appreciate it, brother.
I think that was about it. And lastly, did you get my email that I sent to you?
I don't remember seeing it specifically, but does your email have PQ Media in it? I've got like 600 emails I'm going through right now.
I totally get that. It's Power Queen, which is my email.
Okay, sweet. I'll search for it.
Please.
All right. I will.
I really appreciate all that. And your show's awesome.
Thanks, dude.
I'm trying to catch up on all the old ones.
Sweet.
I do the playlist, video play all.
There you go.
Anyway, thank you very much. You be blessed, and you guys have a great day. I'm going to continue listening on the radio.
Right on, man. You do the same. Thanks for calling.
Bye.
All right,
we'll see you.
Bye.
Yep, bye-bye. And now, this is an excellent time to ask about Social Observer said, I've heard that B17 from apricot seeds reduces tumors. I know that, this is, some type of alternative medicine, but, it ties in with the vitamin B12 that you were just mentioning. Well, I didn't realize there was a B17.
I haven't really looked into B17 much either, but there are a whole lot of B vitamins. I do know that a lot of so vitamin B, vitamin C, those vitamins are water soluble, and the receptors, the way that we absorb those, we only absorb so many, and then we're done with it. We filter it out through our urine.
Yes.
And so taking a whole bunch of it just means it's a whole bunch of filtration. It's the fat soluble ones that actually get stored. And you can have toxicity from storing too many fat soluble vitamins.
Okay.
But
so like vitamin D, vitamin E,
vitamin A.
Vitamin A.
But
okay.
As far as overloading on like vitamin B and vitamin C, your body does filter it out. So I know that I've heard take a lot of vitamin C that it'll help. I haven't read the studies on it. I just know the mechanism of how our body absorbs it. And once we have what we need, it dumps it out. So
it was from a European doctor that I had heard, like intravenous vitamin C for not only cancer, but also like depression. I had heard that. Have you ever heard of vitamin C as a treatment for depression?
I have not.
Okay. Well, we'll look into it. I don't want to.
Well, I mean, it's a treatment for pellagra. It's a treatment for all the linings, the people that were, sailors that didn't have access to fresh fruit. If you don't have vitamin C, you're not making collagen, which is collagen is a protein that helps give structure to your connective tissues. And so all their teeth would fall out. They'd bleed all the time.
Oh,
and
wow.
it would lead to a lot
scurvy.
of mental issues. Yeah, scurvy, not pellagra. Sorry, pellagra is one of the other B vitamins, but scurvy. Yeah, so they'd be called limeys because they'd suck on limes. Their bodies would crave it so that they could actually repair their connective tissues and their teeth would stop falling out.
There you
so,
go.
I mean, it leads to a lot of mental issues too. So not having enough of it can I would say certainly lead to depression, but
you don't want scurvy, guys.
And once you inject it in your body, your kidneys are still filtering out your blood.
Sure.
Your kidneys still filter out what you don't need. It only takes what it can absorb and then filters out the rest. So it's only helpful when you don't have a lot.
Kathy Haverstock sent a super chat, said, Dr. B, what do you think about nutraceuticals working for my son with autism?
I don't know.
Don't know. It's okay. Don't worry. If you don't know, we'll just continue. Move on. Gypsy Nurse Kathy asks, what about C60? Any information on C60?
Yeah, I do have some on that. That is made out of, it's the basis of nanotechnology. It's called carbon 60 is the form of carbon that forms a little soccer ball. It's a 60 carbon soccer ball unit that is named the Buckyball. And my high school friend, her dad, so Richard Smalley, and I forgot the name of the other guy, but they were at Rife University and they won the Nobel Prize for inventing these things. And her dad worked with them and was actually one of their roommates. And it's now the basis for nanotechnology. So it has me scared actually, because nanotechnology, I know it's used a lot in as drug targeting things to where they're trying to get drugs to certain parts of our tissues, but I'm just like, it just seems so transhumanist.
Right.
It just seems like, oh, what, I'm not sure why it's being pushed now as a health principle. I'm not an expert on all of these different methodologies, other than I know that they're using it to make nanoparticles now. So it kind of makes me go, ooh, I don't think I want to inject that.
I just want to let everybody know in the audience, I've got a new setup so that when you call in, you sit in the waiting room until I bring you in. So we do have several people waiting. We've got 12 people waiting, actually. And I just admitted Ted Hill, but Ted, I don't see a microphone. So what I'm going to do is admit the next caller, which is Toshiba. Toshiba, I hope you got your microphone working, and hopefully Ted will get his working while we get Toshiba's question. Toshiba, I don't see a microphone from you either, so we're going to go to the next caller, and I hope that everyone understands that we'll get right back to you. Next, we've got Aaron, my good friend Aaron. Good to see you, friend. And then make sure that you mute the show in the background, everybody.
Yeah, okay.
How you doing, Aaron?
Hi there. Great. How are you doing? Great
Excellent.
show.
I appreciate that. What question or comment did you have for Dr. B and the Sharp Edge?
I was wondering if she's ever heard of Dr. William Coley. He was a doctor.
Cooley's toxins? Yeah.
Dr. Coley's toxin. Yes.
Cooley's toxins. Yeah. This gets back to what was going on at Memorial Sloan Kettering. Who the president, the first director of Memorial Hospital, and then Sloan Kettering, and then they merged together, was Cornelius Rhodes. And we cover Cornelius Rhodes. Yeah, in the first part of an Edges series, part 1 and part 2. So what he was one of the big cancer fighters, that was one of the fathers of chemotherapy, was working. He's the one red pill that was in Puerto Rico. He's working for the Rockefeller Commission. He's working for Simon Flexner, who was head of the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research. They sent him down there, and that's where he was doing all his cancer experiments, where he was injecting cancer into the Puerto Ricans. And he hated Puerto Ricans, and he wanted to kill them all. And that letter of his that he wrote to a colleague back home got discovered. And it's an awful letter of how you want to talk about eugenics, that guy wanted to kill off Puerto Rico. And so when it got found out by his lab techs, and then they published it in the Puerto Rican newspapers, he gets chased out of the country. And then Rockefeller interests, their PR campaign goes into full swing and says it's like this Jonathan Swift, Harvard. It's Jonathan Swift. What was satire was what he was trying. He was just being, it was just funny. It was in bad taste of him saying it, and then he wasn't being serious. But so he's the one that does that in the 30s. Then in the 40s, heads up for the War Department, the
biological warfare.
Mm-hmm. So he's developing chemotherapeutical agents, working with mustard gas, trying to create these toxic substances that can be used as a weapon of mass destruction. And he finds that some of them kill cells and kill cancer. And so he's one of these cancer fighters, gets put on the cover of Time, and then becomes director of Memorial Sloan Kettering once the two hospitals merge. So he's this Rockefeller stooge that was killing people. And William Cooley was working at Memorial Sloan Kettering, and he was, if I remember correctly, he was a bone surgeon that found out when you stimulate the body's immune system, he would inject a little bacteria concoction into where the cancer was. And what it would do was it would stimulate the immune system to come and fight off and kill that little, he would dampen down the virility, and not the virility, the virulence factors of the bacterias. But he would inject it into the cancers, and then the immune system would mount a response against the infection. But in the meantime, they're also mounting a response against the cancer itself. And so, because cancer, one of the things it has to do to survive is figure out how to be a wolf in sheep's clothing, how to evade your immune system that is on the lookout for cells that are not acting appropriately, and they take them out. So once it woke up the immune system with those little bacteria toxins, it would kill the cancer. And he had a lot of he had some good results, but it was hard to replicate because he had to perfect the exact amount of bacteria that you needed to be able to start up the immune system. And so it was hard to replicate by other labs. But here you have the head of the Department for Chemical Warfare, who's funded by Rockefeller, come in, take it over, and he shuts it down. But Cooley's toxins are sort of the basis for immunological therapy, which is all the rage right now because it's funded by, who's funding some immunological therapeutics is Glenn Dubin has a C4 pharmaceutical company that he's funded. We also
imagine that.
Yeah, we have Leon Black and Michael Milken, who, this is what I came on the show for, Red Pill, is I wanted to tell you all the different connections I found between Jeffrey Epstein funding these different companies and all his people that are in the highest levels of medicine. That's what I really know a lot of. But Cooley's toxins, so he shuts the guy down, and this is Cornelius Rhodes who shuts him down. And then they get a big contract from, I forgot the name of the guy doing the radium mines, but they get a huge payout from that. And Cornelius Rhodes wants it only to be focused on chemotherapy. Chemotherapy, thought he could find a toxic agent for every single type of cancer, and that was going to be the cure. So he just diverted funding to all of his stuff. And then radiation took on big because they got some funds from radium mines. I forgot the name of the guy who did that. But that's what happened to Cooley's toxins.
The way I heard it, there were two different pharmaceutical companies making their own version of Dr. Coley's toxin, but they weren't nearly as effective because the doctor would take the person's physiology and design it for that person so it worked better. But there were two drug companies with that on the market. But yeah. And also B17 might be more important than we know, because then you can BQ.
Nice.
All right. Aaron, I appreciate your call, buddy. We've got like 12 people waiting in there,
All
and I
right.
still want to get to Dr. B's other stuff. So thanks for calling, brother. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All
Thank
right,
you.
we'll see you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Before we get into some of those connections, Dr. B, I have a couple more super chats I have to go over. Kenneth Yeoman says the PET cancer test feeds sample cells with irradiated sugar to see the proportion that glow because cancer cells are anaerobic and need sugar, not oxygen, to survive. 42-day fast cured my wife and me. Wow. That's great. Do you know anything in what Ken just stated there?
Well, yeah, the whole way that PET CTs work, PET scans work, is we're looking at the metabolic activity of your different tissues. So they put a I forgot the exact molecule that they link up to glucose, but they give the body sugar. And glucose, all the cells, I mean, your brain really needs glucose. It can live off ketones, but people complain of fogginess until they get adjusted to it. But glucose is the basic molecule that's made from glycolysis that gives off a whole bunch of, it gives the energy of the cell. It's food for the cells. So the cells that are rapidly dividing, the cells that need a lot of energy, they consume the most of it. So your PET scan, your FDG avidity, is how active they are. So the tumor cells will really light up with it. And that's just how we measure it.
Okay.
But I mean, they need oxygen too. They need a whole lot of blood. They're sending out all these growth factors, vasoepithelial growth factors to come in and build blood vessels. Because if they don't get their blood and their oxygen to it, they end up dying. So no, they don't just live off of glycolysis and not oxygen. If they don't get blood vessels going there, they will die, and they outgrow their blood supply.
Complicated system. Also, Ron L. said, hi, Red Pill. Have you or Dr. B heard of Dr. Robert Morse, MD? Or maybe it's ND. He's super red-pilled and claims to have had great success against cancer and his treatments. Check him out and try to get him on the show. Have you ever heard of him? And you don't have to say anything else.
I have not heard of him.
Okay, no problem. We'll see about getting him on the show. Michael Kennedy said, can we just clarify what is processed food? Technically, hummus goes through quite a process. Me personally, anything that, has a variety of ingredients and includes a bunch of chemicals that you can't find, just in your kitchen cupboard. If you're taking whole ingredients and you make a dish and then eat it, I don't really consider that to be processed food. I'm talking about unnatural ingredients that are added. But do you have a specific
Yeah.
phrasing
Processed food. It is whole food. That hummus, I would not call that processed food, because you are just really you're beating up the chickpeas and you're sort of mincing it. Processed would be like getting oil from a nut or olive oil. Oils are processed food. So is refined sugar. If you just eat the apple, you're not just siphoning out all the sugar from it like you do with the. Where does sugar even come from? Cane sugar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you can get it from beets too.
Yeah.
Well, and then Sweaty Zeus wants to know if you are the same Dr. B who wrote the essay and has been on SGT Report. Yes, this is the same Dr. B. So, we've got another half hour left, and I really do want to make sure that we get to all of these connections to Jeffrey because, I put it in the title and everything. So let's talk about that.
I will say Edge was the one who wrote the reports. I came to her with a pile of all my research, and I begged for help because I'm really busy, and she did all the heavy lifting with writing it. So that's her stuff, but it's our research together, and she found a lot of cool connections. It's really a great series. I hope we barely scratched the surface on it. It is interesting stuff. I do recommend reading it.
Yes, and I just want to remind everybody that you can get to these reports by going to the link in the description of this video. And like we said, it's 5 parts so far. Do you have any plans to continue this on? Does it have more legs?
No, I think that we wrapped up this one, but there's always more digs. We were just talking about one before the show. So, but it's not always with medicine. It's really just the same syndicate and all of the criminal activities and investments and influence that they're involved in. Right?
Right. But the dig that I might end up writing it myself. sorry that I haven't had a chance to put it all together, and I appreciate you letting me come out and shout out all these different names and connections, because I at least wanted to get this info out here. But I might write up something about some of the stuff that I'm going to tell you now. And those are just the modern day, the Jeffrey Epstein's connections to all the people within MEGA, and how they all have medical schools named after them, or are on the board of medical institutes, board of trustees, or they have centers named after them, things like that. And they use it. They also fund pharmaceutical companies. And I feel like it's a racket, like it's a reputation laundering. And it's not just medicine. It connects to the art world. It connects to Wall Street. It connects to all of the illegal doping, human trafficking, drug trafficking, money laundering, gambling, arms trafficking, all of the dirty deeds of string pullers that are done in the darkness of cover. And yet they have all these wonderful reputations on the surface of, look what we do, look how we're helping. I have this hospital named after me. And it feels like it's a way to take advantage of people. People like money and importance. And this is how these people connect it and influence others.
Well, and I mean, just the method by which they're doing it. I mean, increasing their reputation by, pumping their money and spending their time on something that, in outward appearances benefits mankind and just, humanity as a whole. But then at the same time, when they're not in their public life, they're doing terrible, terrible things. I mean, I think that Jeffrey Epstein liked to specifically surround himself with people so that he could pump up his reputation, and then, maybe service those people in these different, categories.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. B, do you want to get into, you've talked publicly about this story with your connection to Martin Nowak and Epstein.
Yeah, we can do that one.
That's kind of how it all started. So
really
with our
is.
digs. Yeah.
It really is. A friend of mine Amazing Polly's the best person.
Yes.
Has really covered Martin Nowak extensively. She's done a phenomenal job with exposing it. So if people aren't familiar with the background of who he is and how he was being funded, and what Epstein's plans were for him she's a great resource to get caught up. But he's heading up Harvard's program for evolutionary dynamics. He gets recruited up here he gets recruited to Harvard to fund. The program is to combine mathematics and with evolutionary biology and with molecular biology and with computer software, and so that he can do data mining. And it turns out that my friend trained under Martin Nowak, a guy that I'm really close to. I've been red pilling him over the past 2 years, telling him all about Project Paperclip and MK Ultra, and just a lot of things.
It's insane to me that people wouldn't know about those things already.
Oh, these are the people that I work with. These are MD PhDs. These are people that have spent their whole time in institutions, and I mean, all they know is we're compartmentalized. Right. You're on your little tiny treadmill where you don't have time to learn about anything else. You've got all these research grants you're trying to write. I mean, they only know their little sphere, even though they know a lot within it. And then if you're trusting, you end up trusting the mainstream media. You don't. I mean, I didn't think that such evil could take so much control. I knew that money is the root of all evil, but my goodness, the things that some of these people that are connected to Jeffrey Epstein, how they fund both sides of wars, how they fund like General Dynamics and making all the machines of war, and then they're killing their machines, their armies, their private armies are out there killing all these people, and then they fund all these foundations to where they're doing PTSD for women in war-torn countries, or global health to where we're going to help all these starving kids. You're the one that made all this money off of killing their whole family. It's sickening to me. But Martin Nowak, getting back to him. So my friend is being my friend is working with them. They've written all these papers together. He finds me, sees me one day after it's all come out, and I got all excited and it said, my goodness, did you even know you were being funded by Epstein? Tell me everything you know about Martin Nowak. And he was disgusted and heartbroken. He was like, I need to know everything you know right now about who Jeffrey Epstein is. Why was he up here up funding so much everything going on around Harvard and MIT? He wanted to know, he's met him twice. He was there at the program of evolutionary dynamics when everyone around was so excited. Oh, Epstein's coming. And my friends, who the hell is Epstein? Why is this a big deal? And what he told me was that Martin Nowak met Epstein through Larry Summers. And Larry Summers was the president of Harvard at the time. And Larry Summers was the Treasury Secretary for Bill Clinton under Robert Rubin. And Robert Rubin was the predecessor before him, but Robert Rubin's, from Citigroup. And when you learn about how Citigroup picked all of the cabinet of Barack Obama, it's just, there's a great article I recommend by, it's the Facebook Insider whistleblower. One of the 4 people that started up Facebook with Mark Zuckerberg talks about Mark Zuckerberg being a mind control victim.
Really?
And how, it's great. It's actually, he said that his real name's Greenberg, and it's written by, if you look at who Michael McKibben was, he was up there, not Michael McKibben, it might have been Michael McKibben. Sorry, blanking on his name, but
Dig Anons.
Yeah, Dig Anons. Go to American Intelligence Media, go Facebook whistleblower, exposes everything. And this guy, Michael McKibben, was Leader Technologies and was the person that came up with how to make I've forgotten the exact computer terms for it, but he solved this big problem that could not be solved. And there was James Chandler was one of the professors at Harvard that was working secretly, and Larry Summers was heading it up, and Larry Summers was the handler. And they hacked into Michael McKibben's son's computer after, because James Chandler was the patent lawyer for Leader Technologies. And he's the one that told him, Michael McKibben, to send it to his son, who was in the same dormitory as Mark Zuckerberg. So anyway, read the article. It's great. It really makes a lot of sense. Michael McKibben really, and I hope that's his name. I'm sorry that I'm blanking out on it, but you'll see it in the article. He supports it, and it really does fit, because he said that Sheryl Sandberg was the Larry Summers squeeze. She was the handler that was sent over to take care of Zuckerberg when he was in San Francisco. But Larry Summers here was the handler. Larry Summers was Mark Zuckerberg's handler. And it matches with a lot of the testimony of him being a Greenberg, is who this person said. And Ed had just done this awesome dig on the Greenberg's connections to Jeffrey Epstein. And
I couldn't prove anything. I didn't know about this article you were talking about. If I had found it, I would have included that. But I had heard about Zuckerberg. I just didn't know. I didn't know.
I work with, I've had some MK Ultra friends that I've really tried to help, some bloodliners that were born into this, that have gone through, satanic ritual abuse since they were itty bitty children. They were born into this stuff. And it matched so much with the testimony of how he was in a mind control project, that he was chosen because he had relatives that were responsible for implementing some of the project. And I think it's a fascinating article that I encourage everyone to read. But getting back to I had just read that, I knew that Larry Summers I'd heard that Larry Summers was the handler, and he's not a good person. But then I thought about, wait a second, when my friend told me it was Larry Summers who brought up Martin Nowak from Princeton's Advanced Studies Department, Program for Advanced Studies, and wanted him up here. Wanted him up to Harvard, and it clicked that, oh, wait a second, he's the one that brought in and introduced Epstein to all of the researchers that were there. And so Epstein, what he wanted to do when he testified in front of the Virgin Island Economic Development Commission, he wanted to bring Martin Nowak down to head up his program. And it just, what they said, my friend said when he met Epstein was that he wasn't really interested in what my friend had to say. They were just, all the scientists there were told to sound smart and show off and sound presentable. And Epstein had pretty women with him, but they weren't underage. They were good looking women. And then the tip that he gave me is why I contacted Edge and why she started writing Epstein's Swedish Connection, because he said, Dr. B, there's, I told him everything about sexual blackmail operations, human compromise operations, how they've been going on human compromise has been going on since as long as we've had prostitution. It's age old. And so as he's learning all of this stuff, he goes, Dr. B, if this is what he was really doing, there's one person I can think of that I met at this time that even back then when I was oblivious to all of this, she really gave me the creeps. Her name is Barbara Imbaum, and she has this Barbara's Best and Brightest, where all these women, they're young women around her that she invites into. It's an invitation only. They have to be highly educated. It's not like they're underage, uneducated people that are being trafficked and taken advantage of. These are other MDs, other PhDs, other MD PhDs at the top of their research game. But the way that she would talk about these women and introduce them to everybody and try and network for them, said Dr. B, it was like she was a madam. She gave me the creeps. And he goes, I don't know what's going on, but look into her. So that's when I gave it to Edge, and Edge started digging too. And that's when they found out Barbara Imbaum used to work at Brofman and Rothschilds, or for Linda Forster Rothschild, she was grooming the Edge. Remember how you found that she was grooming the Swedish princess?
Yes.
And how
exactly.
And if you go on, you find Barbara's Best and Brightest, the pictures, they are these really good looking women, and they're always, and it looked like, I don't know if she was trying to set up husbands, and I don't if she was playing matchmaker at an elite level, or if there was something more sinister on the surface. But she's the one that gave my friend the creeps. So that was Epstein's Swedish dig, and I thought you did a great job on that one.
Thank you. Yeah, that was an interesting one. You can find that on both on the Hive Mind website and on YouTube. I did a video breakdown of that one.
Do you guys mind if I bring in another caller, see if we can get a question about this Epstein stuff? Because I think that Thomas from True Reporting might be in here, or maybe that was the Thomas that wasn't working before. Well, we got Ted Hill up next. Ted, are you there? Do we have a microphone? Ted, I don't think we have a microphone, buddy, and we've got 8 people waiting, so I'm going to kick you back into the waiting room, and we're going to go to the next caller. And let's see, that would be, Toshiba, we're going to try Marie Suzanne Waslick. Marie, are you there? Do you have a microphone on? Don't have a microphone yet, but Marie, we have video. You'll need to... there we go.
Some of the project. And
I think we need to have you mute the video on your end.
Fascinating article that I encourage everyone to read. Getting back to that's me rambling.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm good at that.
Marie, let me go ahead. As long as that's muted, I'm gonna try to. If you can unmute yourself, and
okay. Who brought
we still got the video going on your end, Marie. We need you to have.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Program for Advanced Studies. And wanted him up here. Wanted him up to Harvard.
All right. Well, while she's getting that muted, I'm going to do a couple of super chats. Carol Blitz said, "Brondo, it's got electrolytes. It's what plants crave." That's from Idiocracy.
There you go, Tom.
It's one of my favorite movies. Love it.
Yep.
And then Lisa Lady became a member, and she said, "Hey, Red, I just wanted to help, and I became a member. Love you. Love you too, Lisa. Thank you for that." Let's see, Marie, I'm going to unmute you again. Do we have that? Do you have the video muted?
Yeah, I believe I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm also Susie Hoosie. Listen,
okay.
I want to make a comment. I live in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, the former Manhattan Project.
Yeah.
And I actually hosted Judith Baker. I brought her to town, and she
how cool!
A bunch of her
love
books.
Her.
Right? Okay, so I'm not that great of a PR person, but I printed out hundreds of flyers and gave them away. 8 people showed up for the meeting, and when Judy went by the desk clerk, she overheard him on the phone saying, "No, there's no book meeting tonight." You know, I mean, even now, nobody wants anybody to know about the JFK assassination and the real truth.
Yeah.
I want to know. I think it's a fascinating story.
Yeah.
Her story needs to get out there.
Well, she can't live in the U.S. because they keep trying to kill her. She's had
Right.
Yeah, all
She's-
these different accidents that
And
brake
all her
lines
luggage
being
has
cut.
gone through. She's amazing. Yeah. But anyway,
Excellent.
that was my comment, and I appreciate y'all. And
Well, thank you for your call, Marie.
okay.
Thank you for
Interesting.
doing that for her and trying to get the word out. It's important because
Right.
from JFK to 9/11, that's one of the best documentaries out there. Everything's a rich man's trick, and
Yep.
she is she connects so much of it. It's still the same, just little cancers within medicine and how they're being used and how they're being used by some of Epstein's good friends still today, and how those people are connected to 9/11. And this needs to come out. The
Big,
people need to know the
massive
truth.
web.
All right. Well, thank you for your call, Marie. I appreciate it.
Okay. You're welcome.
Yeah,
Bye.
we'll talk to you soon. All right. I'm going to bring in the next caller, and that is we're going to try Toshiba one more time. Toshiba, do you have your microphone working, bud? All right. Doesn't look like it. So we're going to go with Phil Demon next. And let's see, because I don't see Thomas. Well, I see some numbers, but I don't know if any of those are Thomas. Phil Denman, you are on the air with Dr. B and Sharp Edge. Don't have a microphone working. Everyone, if you can just make sure your microphone is set before we bring you into the call. We're going to try to go to Kim Condon. Kim, do you have your microphone working? Nope. All right, we're going to try one more, and if not, then we're going to continue on. Southern Rebel, don't have a microphone working either. I don't know why. This happened last night. Everybody's microphones were just turned off, and that it's not usually how it works. So, all right. Well, guys, we're going to
Well, can I run with it? Because
go for it.
This is, and I'm sorry. I don't know the. Uh-oh, is someone back there?
Oh, you know what? Kim did get her microphone working. Kim, what was your question or comment for Dr. B or Sharp Edge?
No, I don't know how my real name got up there, but this is Rain.
Okay. Okay.
Comments, Cajun vapes, whatever. But I started off with that whole other thing I went through this weekend, but then we went to that cancer thing, and Zach Voorhees, one of my employees, had gotten cancer. She had a 6 centimeter tumor on her left kidney and a 3 centimeter on her right, or vice versa. And this was just a month ago.
Good evening.
Phil, we got another caller. We're going to go to you next. Keep going, Rain.
Okay, and Zach Voorhees had told me about the apricot seeds, so I ordered Crystal some of those seeds. And 2 weeks later, Red Pill, the 6 centimeter tumor was 3 centimeters and no longer cancerous, and the right one was gone completely. The doctor didn't know what to say. Had no
That's
idea
awesome. That's awesome. That's
Very
incredible.
I mean, you can't say that that cured it, but you can't say that it didn't. And that's just the thing. I mean, you don't know. There's no way to know. But they told her when she was diagnosed, they told her she would have to have surgery in like 10 to 12 days to take that tumor off of her kidney. And now she's fine. And that just took 2 weeks of eating 17 of those seeds a day.
That's pretty
17.
incredible. Obviously, it's something that we should look into more.
Obviously, and and the other stuff we'll talk about another time. Something really strange happened to me these last 8 days. I don't even know what it was, but that's a different day. Let's stay on this conversation. I'll let you move on.
All right, thanks. Appreciate it, Rain. Have a good one.
All right, you too.
Yep, thanks for your call. Okay, and then Phil definitely did get his microphone working. Phil, you are now on the air with Dr. B and Sharp Edge. What was your question or comment? Phil?
Well, it's still fuzzy on my end.
I don't know. I can hear you loud and clear.
Good. Research the grandchildren of Project Paperclip.
Dr.
We're
B or
still going.
Sharp Edge, did that come up in your research specifically?
I don't know, honestly. I don't know any of the relatives of
Well,
Project Paperclip.
I know like Reinhard Gellen, and there's a couple of people that are still now connected with. I know George Webb talks about it a lot, but
Please research the children or grandchildren.
Do you have any names you want to throw out to give us a start off?
Nope. Phil, and any names you want to tell us? All right. Well, Phil, thanks for your call, bud. I appreciate it, and we will go ahead and look into that for sure, because, I mean, that's definitely something I'm interested in. I want to know what happened to that lineage, because I can only imagine what those people would be doing now. I can tell you one person that I know their name has been thrown out was Rod Rosenstein as the grandson of Himmler. I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah, I heard that too, and there is an eerie resemblance.
Definitely. All right, let's try. Baby Love 78, and looks like you got your camera working. We have your microphone working, Baby Love. Baby Love, I don't know if Baby Love can hear us or see us. No, you can't hear us. You gotta go into your preferences and set your.
I got it.
You got it. Good stuff.
Got it.
Well, good to see you.
Hi,
Thanks for your call.
Yeah. Now you know what I look like in person. Oh, well, kind of. So here's something that happened to us recently.
Okay.
My son is 9. He was diagnosed with juvenile arthritis when he was 4. And the doctor is pushing methotrexate. And as soon as she said that, I was like, why would we give a cancer drug to a child for arthritis? When I think that there's got to be better ways to do this other than, drugs like that. I can't see, it just doesn't make sense to me.
That does sound strange. Dr. B, do you have any comment on that? I mean, a cancer drug for juvenile arthritis. I mean, I don't know what the connection would be, but maybe you can expound on it.
They commonly use it for autoimmune diseases to help dampen down an overactive immune system. And a lot of those chemotherapy drugs or methylating agents, they're used to also the different types of leukemias, the blood-borne cancers that we get. They're often used to treat that as well. I'm not a fan. As much as I am a pathologist and I diagnose cancer, I'm not a fan of the Western medical industrial complex. I don't like big pharma. I don't like drug treatments. And I'm glad that I at least was able to find myself a niche where I'm not giving those out to other people or giving vaccines. I'm trying to avoid that part of my career, but I also, as far as why would they give it? Because they know that it affects the immune system, that it stops the immune system from being too active. And autoimmunity is when your immune system attacks your own body. So that's what they're trying to do. But I don't like chemotherapy.
I just think it's weird, Dr. B, because she was talking about the next step would be Enbrel. And she called Enbrel a immunosuppressive drug. And I understand that, but so is the chemotherapy type drugs like methotrexate. And I just don't understand that at all. And to me, that's just babble. And I ask her about holistic ways of doing things. And she goes, well, there's nothing that's proven.
We're not even trained. We're not trained in it. We don't know. So that's why I call us gatekeeper pawns, is because we know what we're taught in medical school. And no one talks about the history of medicine and who was involved with funding all these different research institutes and who's involved in funding the American Cancer Society and funding big pharma. And it just, so doctors are hubristic and can be ignorant too. So sorry about that.
Yeah.
No,
maybe try
I can't go back.
Homeopathic doctor in your area. See if there is one. Maybe give that a shot. All right. Well,
San
Baby
Antonio
Love
is different than Cali, so it's been a little difficult finding things here than over there. So
I feel you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for your call, Baby Love. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Have a good one.
Yep. You
Happy
too.
New Year.
Bye-bye. Happy New Year. All right. And now I did have a couple of super chats. I grow dank nugs. the chat, Ja lives, hashtag free Rufus, Paul Harris, God bless and Godspeed. That's right, God bless and Godspeed to you. And then Brittany Taylor, thank you very much, Brittany Taylor, for that super chat. All right, let's see. Cameron Downey. Cameron, do we have a microphone? Cameron does not have a microphone. So we're going to go to 333Q. Actually, I'm sorry, Jim Luckett. Jim, do you have, we got a video, Jim, but we don't have a microphone. Set your microphone, and then we got video on Cameron too, but we have no, there we go. Jim, we've got audio, Jim, and then make sure everybody has their videos muted in the background. Jim, what's your question or comment for the panel today?
There we go. Jim, we've got audio, Jim, and then make sure everybody has.
Hey, I think we've still got the video going.
Jim, what's your question or comment?
Yeah.
Dr. B, have you heard of Dr. Brzezinski?
Yeah, that's what I was talking about earlier. Brzezinski's documentary, "The Cancer is a Serious Business." I recommend watching that. It's a good one.
It is. My question is, I mean, the government basically shut him down and then patented his.
Yeah, we're trying to patent it and make money off of it after they tried to get him his medical license revoked. I mean, he's still, if you go to the Texas Medical Board and you look it up, he is on the top of their watch list. He gets hounded every year.
Yes, he does. And the research I've done is that the guy figured out something. He discovered the missing amino acid.
Well, I mean, it's not like one amino acid is missing from your body. I think it's really a lot more complicated, but he did find that there was something within the urine of healthy people that he tended not to see in the urine of his patients with cancer.
Yes.
And he called it the anti-neoplastons, and he was manufacturing it from healthy people's urine. And that's when they tried to attack him and say, "Ooh, he's making it from urine. That's disgusting." When Premarin is the estrogen supplement that they give all, they used to hand it out to all the women that were having, menopause symptoms, and they make that from horse urine. So the fact that they were trying to smear him and say that he was doing something awful when this is a main pharmaceutical stay, it's disingenuous.
Have you heard about the Israeli scientists that found a cure for cancer? Did you ever read that article?
No, I did not. And I'm kind of, when they say we found one cure for cancer, every cancer is different. I mean, I look at the molecular and cytogenetic nature of every type of cancer. People that have one cancer, they have different cancer clones within that same cancer because it's always developing different mutations. Yes. So it's for someone to say, "Oh, there's just this one cure," I kind of, but I don't know what I don't know. But I do kind of shy away from something that I think is a little bit too simplistic or what's the word? Propped up in the press as being that exciting. I'm like, well, maybe for a certain type, but yeah, no, I
agree, because the press, they can't be trusted, for one, and two, who knows? Everything is an opinion of the press.
That's right. Jim, well, thank you for your call, buddy. We've only got 3 minutes left, and we've got a couple more callers I'm going to try to get through. So I appreciate you calling in, bud.
Hey, Red Pill, love you. Watch you daily.
Thanks, bro. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for calling in.
Thank you.
Yep, we'll talk to you soon. All right, we've got Cameron Downey. Cameron, it looks like you're making stickers there, and
none of my work.
Okay, it's pretty cool.
None of mine.
I love the Baby Yoda. Tune in tomorrow, I'm telling you.
I just have a poem. People hate poetry, so.
Fun fact, I'm a published poet.
Me too.
There we go.
Yeah, my grandpa made me do it.
Right on.
So you look at me and smile like there's some master plan, because, man, there is. Since kids were this. Just cool. Not a fool, but innocent. Straight or bent, we're right there. Aware and not to judge. Permitting, we don't budge. And I may be wrong, but we're all right tonight. And you look at me and smile like there's some master plan. because man, you know there is. Since kids were this, in tune. We're best friends for now. And we allow as we teach. And we reach, not to grasp. Familiar with no past. I may be wrong, but we're all right tonight.
Beautiful. I love it.
Brother Red Pill, you're a ninja.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate it.
And Jedi, all the way. Jedi.
Awesome, dude. Well, thank you for calling, Cam. I appreciate it, bro. Call in tomorrow night, okay?
Cheers.
All right. We'll see you, man. Thanks for the call. All right. I'm going to try to get to one more call, you guys. I know we've got a lot of people waiting, but we're going to go to this caller right here.
Well, thank you for calling, Cam. I appreciate it, bro.
We've got
Yeah, hey.
Yeah. I just put you on mute for a brief second so you can hit pause on the video. And
one more call, you guys. I know we've got a lot.
Mute that video, my friend. Mute the video, and then we can get your call in.
This caller right here.
Oh, you guys, if the video's going when you come on, then we'll get some feedback. So real quick, just do a couple of super chats while they're getting that sorted. Ron L. says, any truth to George Scherf Sr. and Jr. were Prescott and G.H.W. Bush? Did that come up in Dr. B and Sharp's research? A good book is The Veil of Invisibility. That's a good question. And any truth to that in your research that George H.W. and Prescott were actually the Scherfs?
Oh, I did read that article. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know, because then you get back to Samuel Bush and the Walkers, and I thought that article was very, very interesting. But I don't know, man.
Also, Venom Splat says, what happened to Space Shot? He is MIA. Space Shot is okay, guys. I did speak to him, and I meant to talk about this at the top of the hour, and I completely forgot. Space Shot's okay. He had some electrical issues, so he is going to be back. He just missed the show today. Phil Denon says, YouTube keeps putting me on delay. They know who I am, LOL. Venom Splat again asked about Space Shot. Baby Yoda, thank you for the super chat, bud. And then Venom Splat asked again about Space Shot, and then Nicolette New York Teddy Bear. All right, caller, we're going to unmute you again. And can we get your name?
Sure, it's Haterproof. What's going on?
Oh, Haterproof. What's up, brother?
What up, man? I always call you. You know that I'm always watching. We're always
yeah.
watching us non-watchers. Anyway, so what's going on, Dr. B? I just wanted to say hello, and it's a pleasure listening to the show tonight because you seem like you're very intelligent. And,
thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And I wanted to say that I think that with the proteonic research and glucose levels that are tailored to the particular patient and what particular cancer there is pretty promising. Seems interesting anyway. As far as the sugar aspects go. But on another note, I wanted to also say there were some connections between the eugenics program that Epstein's were involved with, or the foundation, and I think some people that were involved with artificial intelligence. And I wanted to know what your opinion was on the advent of artificial intelligence, a quantum AI in the future, being able to maybe tailor those particular medicines to cure what it is that ails us in general. And then maybe too, like with the wavelength research that you had talked about with your friend earlier in the show, I was curious, do you think that maybe perhaps people could use those same wavelengths not only to heal medicine at particular frequencies, but maybe envision different dimensions or see into the future or into the past, or things like that. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. I hope that's not too much. And
no. Well,
thanks, Red. Awesome. I'll let you go. Let you get to the next caller too.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. And excellent questions. Okay. Dr. B, any thoughts on those?
Well, if you start to look into the voice of skull technology with weaponized very low frequency electromagnetic frequencies that are sent to people for mind control purposes, and they talk about the voice of God. As far as I don't know specifically to the caller's question regarding and I'm sorry, I'm forgetting some of the questions, but regarding wavelength and being able to cure things. But as far as just the mechanism of how neurons get activated and using very low frequency, you can, our neurons, it's an ionic electrochemical potential that's gone across the membranes of your neurons. So what they would do when they were first figuring out which neurons did what during brain surgery, they would stimulate it with a little electrode and it would activate. And then, they'd figure out what part of the brain did what type in the body. Like if they activated it and you raised your arm, they're like, oh, this is motor control. But if you get into some of the mind control research and the patents on the voice to skull technology that they talk about, you definitely can use very low frequency energy triangulated to activate those action potentials within neurons and cause synapses and neurons to communicate. I think it's very, very scary. I think that the future of tech and marketing with the transhumanist movement, I'm terrified of it. I think Edge did a great write-up in the article in part 5 on the transhumanist agenda. I think it's always going to be sold as, just have this chip in your body, this microchip, and you'll be cured, or, you'll have incredible memory. You'll be able to access the internet just by a thought. You'll have all this information at your fingertips. But I think it's always going to be sold to us as a good thing, not, hey, take this and, you're fulfilling Matthew 24, or, it's Mark of the Beast type stuff. And, Edge and I have been talking about Neon Revolt's 666 Fifth Avenue article.
Oh, it's a great one.
That's one of my favorites. We've been digging into huge with AT&T, with Lucent Technology, and with just chips in your hand or in your forehead. I think this is kind of the transhumanist agenda is very scary, and I think it's going to be Trojan horsed for humanity's demise.
I kind of agree with you on that. Mel C said non-muted callers equals time for super chats. Thank you, Mel. And Phil Denon said Jeffrey E has 2 grandpas. Who were they? I don't know anything about that. Did you guys see who Jeffrey's grandparents were? Any people in his family tree?
I haven't dug into his grandparents. No.
Yeah, just his brother. I didn't dug into his family connections either. That's something I definitely should have thought of and do. That's a
all right. Thought. Well, we're running just a couple minutes late, you guys. I've got just a couple more callers left. I want to try to get through those. Southern Rebel, you're on the air, but I haven't heard anything from you yet. Are you there?
I'm here.
Excellent.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. And if you can, briefly, what was your question or comment for Dr. B and the Sharp Edge?
I will try to be quick. I found out something about a few weeks before Christmas, and I've kind of suppressed it because I haven't even told the people in my research group. So if they're hearing this for the first time. But I've gotten close to my biological mother over the last several years. And we just found out, first she found out she had lymphoma. She had a huge knot in her neck. They removed that. They did the PET scan thing. And then they found out she has lung cancer too.
Sorry to hear that.
Thank you. They've installed a port in her for the chemo.
Mm-hmm.
And my question is, not only my concern with her, but is this stuff hereditary? I mean, I know some about my biology. I was adopted at birth in the hospital. My parents, they had a baby that died when it was born, and it ended up. My dad calls it a miracle, and I ended up going home with my parents. Excuse me. It chokes me up. I ended up going home with my parents as their baby. And, but I don't know everything about my father's side, but particularly as it relates to this, is this stuff hereditary? Is it, that's my question.
All right. Thank you, Southern Rebel, for that. And we're going to take the answer off the air. I appreciate it. And I hope your mom is going to be okay.
Thank you, sweetie.
Yep, thank you. Bye-bye. We'll talk to you next time. Dr. B, anything to worry about with cancer as a hereditary thing? I feel like it sounds, I've heard differing things on it.
Oh, well, for sure there are certainly genetic syndromes, cancer syndromes that are inherited through our germlines. Like Lynch syndrome is one that predisposes. That's where you have a problem with when your DNA is being replicated and you put up the wrong base on it, and the enzymes come together and try to remove it and repair it so that your genome won't develop mutations. And people that have a germline mutation and that aren't the best at repairing when they acquire genetic mutations, or when they get hits to their genome like ultraviolet light, or when they get irradiated, or when they get exposed to certain types of chemicals. And over time they get all these hits to their genomes and they break out in a bunch of different types of cancers. But for the most part, and there's lots of symptoms like that. Leaf-Raumeni is another one, and it's usually always involved with DNA repair, but that's a very a small minority of most cancers. Now, if I see a patient and they have a history of lymphoma and other hematological malignancies in their history, and we tend to pay attention a little bit more because sometimes we do see it. But as far as the vast majority of the times, it's usually not a germline mutation.
Okay. All right. We've got another caller. Caller, real briefly, what was your question or comment for Dr. B and the Sharp Edge?
I have a little experience with B17. A neighbor had a golf ball-sized tumor on her neck and 35 spots on her lungs. The doctor sent her home to die. Well, the wife and I had done some research and found that the B17 kills cancer cells, and we had been taking them medicinally for quite some time. And we walked over there along with our SEAC-T, which is a blood cleaner. It's got 4 herbs in it. I guess it's an Indian recipe that works. It's got sheep's sorrel, burdock root, slippery bark elm, and turkey rhubarb. Anyway, she got on a diet with a doctor in our nearby town with no meat, no dairy, and the seeds, the seeds, which are Laetrile, liquid B17 is called Laetrile, and they have institutes that will take people in with stage 4 cancer and cure you within a month and send you home. Wow. Anyway, she got on this diet with no meat, no dairy, the seeds and the tea, and within a year's time, all the spots were gone on her lungs, the lump was gone on her neck, and they couldn't even find any trace of cancer in her blood at all. It was completely gone.
Wow.
Completely gone.
Sounds like she watched Forks Over Knives and went on the whole food plant-based diet, which I actually would do that myself if I had stage 4 cancer. Stage 4 is where it's widely metastatic. I see how awful it is when I look at the karyotype chromosomes of these cancers. I wouldn't. It depends on what type of cancer it is, and I would get the workup myself. But if it was a really bad stage 4 cancer, I wouldn't stick with the modern medical system. I do like that whole foods plant-based diet. I think the China study that went with it and the documentary Forks Over Knives that talks about it, my mother does that, and she is in incredible health. That's what I myself would do, especially if I came down with it. So congratulations to your friend. That's wonderful.
Yeah, well, great story. Yeah, great story.
It was completely gone. They couldn't even find it in her blood, and they wouldn't change her status. At stage 4, they refused to change it because they didn't know how she was cured.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you what, guys, I'm going to do a show just on B17 because I've heard so much stuff about it tonight. Well, caller, thank you very much, and I hope you have a great night.
All right, thank you. You're the man. You're part of history, bud.
Oh, dude, I really appreciate that. It means a lot. All right, talk to you soon.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
All right, you guys, we just keep getting more callers coming on, and we're already 12 minutes over, so I just want to say I'm sorry for all the callers that we haven't been able to get to. Sorry to Dr. B and The Edge for keeping you guys over, but I really do appreciate you guys being here. And anytime we do a show that has anything tangentially to do with medicine, obviously we're going to get so many calls because obviously this is something that people are really interested in. Dr. B, have you thought about, maybe doing your own podcast where you, speak to people on this subject?
Man, that's a whole other skill set that I have to learn. First, you got to teach me how to do the whole setup on how you did your studio stuff. And I'm swamped with work, honestly, right now. That's why I wanted to come on and tell you about the other dig that I had that we didn't get a chance to, because I don't have time to even write a paper and get all the research that I have done. I appreciate when I have friends like the Sharp Edge that can help me get some of it out. So that's it. I just don't have the time. But thanks for saying that.
Yeah, no problem. Well, Dr. B, I want to please ask you to consider coming back on the show. Maybe we can do something pre-recorded, and we can talk about, anything specifically that you want to get out there, because it's always a joy to have you on the show. Edge, I love having you on the show as well. And I know you're so busy. I know you're both so busy with your own program and with your career, Dr. B. So thank you so much for coming, you guys, and let's definitely get something together here very, very soon in the future.
It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you.
And thank you so much. This was a pleasure.
Great. I need to do 2 super chats before we say goodbye. Baby Love 78 said, what's the chance that the chips on our hands or our forehead could start with cell phones and VR? I think that's probably where they're going to go with it. And then Sella said 1717. Did you have a question or a comment on that?
I think even the credit card chip readers, that was sort of conditioning us. I think the cell phone and cell phone pay is conditioning us. And so it's just, because the magnetic strip, to me, I'd like the magnetic strip more on the credit card than that stupid chip. And I feel like it's one extra little step, because they always baby step you. They don't throw out big things that are going to change your routine. But yeah, it would be easier, wouldn't it, to just check out with RFID when it's just in your hand and you don't even have to get out your phone. And so I think it's a setup for that. I think you won't be able to buy or sell without it. I think that's where we're going.
Definitely. I agree with you there. And Cello with one more super chat. Thank you very much. I want to say thank you to everyone as well who has been here tonight for this exciting program that we just did. Thank you to my guests one more time. Thank you to everybody who supported the program in any way, because I wouldn't be able to do it if it wasn't for you guys. And as always, this has been a Red Pill 78. I am the Corruption Detector, and this was your Red Pill News for Saturday Night Livestream with Dr. B and the Sharp Edge. Good luck, everyone, and God bless.